Now that I've laid out the outlines of the front, side, and top view, I'm ready to start fleshing out my drawing. I'm going to start with the front view since I've already worked out a lot of the proportions for the front in my sketch. I will be using a 1/8 scale to take measurements for my sketch, and a 3/8 scale for my orthographic drawing. Just like in woodworking, focusing in on details or shaping too soon can lead to mistakes with the overall proportion or scale of my tote. So the first thing I'm going to do is lay out as many of the major features of my tote using just horizontal and vertical lines for now. This will include locating the feet, the front panels, and giving thickness to the sides. Remember to minimize the number of times you take measurements as much as possible. It will be much more accurate to just extend or reflect an existing measurement with my T-square or the vertical side of my triangles. As I dial my components in, I can start erasing redundant lines I no longer need. This will make the drawing easier to read. I can also darken lines that I know I will not need to be altered. A prominent feature of my tool tote design is the arching asymmetrical handle. Drawing curves in orthographic drawings can be somewhat challenging. If I use a compass, I can draw a curve with a consistent radius of up to 3 inches. If I use the French curves, then I can draw a variety of curves with changing radii, but it can be difficult to blend one curve into another. Or if I have a friend to help, I can bend a piece of veneer or plastic to my desired curve and have them carefully trace it. But how can I accurately reproduce a curve once I've found a method that works for me? The easiest way is to plot reference points of where my curve starts, where it ends, where it peaks, or where it changes direction. This way, when you scale up for your final project, you will still be able to reproduce your desired curve on a template. As you can see, I struggled a bit drawing the handle. Anytime a curve changes direction, you essentially need to draw 2 curves that are tangent to each other. This can sometimes be tricky to pull off without creating a kink in the curve. So it took me a while to really dial in that line the way that I liked it. And just kind of visually looking at it now, it looks a little bit too long to me. Like it looks like it extends past the tool tote too much. This is something that is really common with sketches where something looks really right in that 5-second sketch that you did, but once you start adding dimensions to it, it starts to look a little bit off. So now instead of having it go all the way 4 inches out, I think I'm probably going to cut them off a little prematurely. So I'm going to try first with my 60-degree angle to see what kind of effects that could look. And that looks pretty good to me. So that's closer to 2.5 inches, I believe. Yeah, just about 2.5 inches. So this is just an example of how sometimes when you're doing your final drawing, and that one looks a little bit more awkward because it's closer to a 90-degree angle there, so I'll try 45 degrees since it's already asymmetrical. That looks better to me. So at this stage in your drawing, if you're still working out your proportions, you could definitely grab a piece of tracing paper and lay it on top of your drawing and just freehand sketch over your drawing for a bit until you really got it to a place where you like it. Because this drawing is going to basically act as your blueprint for the rest of your project. So you want to really dial in all of your dimensions and proportions at this stage of your design. So visually looking at that, to me that looks a little bit too abrupt of a transition. This hole just looks a little bit too small compared to how large and swoopy the handle is. So I'm going to mess around with it a bit more. And I'm going to make a wider radius, which means that my pivot point will actually be above this line here. That's a much swoopier look to it. I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to make a mirror version of that pivot point. And then to indicate the line that I can't see if I had X-ray vision, I'm going to add a hidden line. And all that means is that that's just showing what would be on that redundant side if I were to draw the back instead of the front of this tool tote. So it's basically just showing what it would look like if you could see through the tool tote. And then to show that it would actually be blocked by the solid wood sides of the tool tote, I've made it a dashed line. And you can either dash by hand or you can buy an eraser shield. They're pretty cheap. I think they're only like $1 or $2. And you can selectively erase with the eraser shield to create that dashed line. And for my feet, it might be easiest to use my French curve. So first I'm going to decide how flat my feet are, how much material is going to be in contact with the ground. And since I'm already working in 3/4 of an inch as sort of a reference point, I might make it 1.5 inches. And then what I can do is I can actually mark up my French curve where it's intersecting with the bottom and use that as a reference later on. So I'm just going to transfer those marks to the other side of my French curve. So one example of something that I won't be able to see will be the bottom of my tote. So I'll just make that 3/4 of an inch to remain consistent. And I'm just going to indicate that with a dashed hidden line. Next, I'm going to indicate the through tenon joinery in my handle. So right now I have these lines consistently going through the sides, but that's actually just going to be an illusion. In reality, I'm just going to have a through wedge tenon with a cap on the other side. And tenons don't need to be a specific dimension. They're usually anything from 1/3 to 1/2 of the width of the stretcher. So if I grab here, it's just over 1 inch. So I'm just going to say it's going to have 1/4 inch shoulders on either side. So this tenon will be quite small because of that carving, but this tenon should more than make up for it. And keeping in mind the tenon will be coming through to both sides. So this side should be fine because it's pretty parallel. But this side I might actually need to move that line down because you'll see that will start to threaten to break out of the grain right there. And I just kind of eyeballed the length here, but it's just about 1 inch. So I'm going to erase this line here and redraw it slightly lower. So I lose a little bit of glue surface there, but I gain more mechanical strength.